You as an entrepreneur, you have a lot of businesses, you have a lot of opportunities. What's your decision-making process when you're taking on that next meeting, when you are looking at this opportunity that was presented to you, or just how do you allocate your time? What's your decision-making process like? You have a lot of things going on.
Yeah, no. And again, if you've ever heard me do a keynote or I get interviewed in public, I talk about this subject more than anything else, because time is the ultimate equalizer and commodity, in my opinion. So whether I'm talking about leverage and I'm talking to people like, when do I make a hire? And I'll have an audience run an exercise where I say, take your 1099 from last year, your total GCI, and divide it by 2080, which is 2,080 hours, which is what the labor department says about it's a full-time job, right? And that number could be, for some people, $16, for some people, $50, for some people, $250, right? Towards the end of my career, that was like $1,700 an hour. And so I encourage people to look at their time from that lens at the beginning, and then do what lawyers do, which is to walk around with a notepad and write down everything you do in 6 or 7 minute increments. And then after a week, you can actually sit down and mathematically figure out what it is you do for a living, right?
That's a very practical approach. I love that.
Pragmatic. So what I always say is my first hire in real estate at 19 was actually the lady who cleaned my condo on the weekends, on Saturdays. And I negotiated a fee where I wanted her to actually deep clean the bathrooms, do the dishes, and do my laundry, which is typically out of the scope of someone who cleans, but that's what I negotiated. And whatever her fair value rate for that job is what I want. Mm-hmm. But in those 4 hours I took her to clean instead of 2, I got everything I needed for the week, but I more importantly got 4 hours to go show properties. Because, if you're a single male and you don't do those things, then you're not going to find a partner, right? So you got to look presentable. You got to smell good. Your house needs to look good, or no one's going to want to come hang out with you. And so that needs to be done. So people say, well, I can't afford it. It's like, what you can afford is not to go show houses on Saturday.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so if it's $120 in today's dollars, I probably paid $35 20 years ago, but in today's dollars, $120, $150 for a company to come do those things, is that $150 worth the investment for you to go show 4 houses or hold an open house and get some leads?
Yeah.
Right. And so I encourage people to look at leverage from that level. Like, I think the first things you leverage is the personal stuff. Right. I was speaking at an event and I literally said, if you mow your lawn, you should be embarrassed. And the whole crowd laughed and somebody tweeted it out. Leo said this. But what I mean by that is, if like literally today, in today's dollars, it's about $35 to get service to come mow your house. Right? Because they're now crews and they're machines and they're fast.
Yeah.
I would argue any man or woman who mows their lawn for those $35, there's a much better ROI on that time. And to me, it's be with my kids, right? Because that's that emotional energy that gives me the energy to run the 70 hours a week you see me run. Right?
And you're being conservative on that.
Yeah, time change. Sometimes it's 80 hours in a 5-day period. But
true.
That exercise then goes all the way up to where I am today, right? It's like, first, if I was an administrative assistant that did the paperwork and the data entry, and, are you a sign installer? Like, are you literally driving across town to hang for sold, right? Deliver a package.
Yeah.
And before you go getting encumbered with bills, with payroll, it's like, hey, there's all kinds of services where it's like, hey, $45 a la carte courier, go return this. Mm-hmm. Right? But then you really need to start running a P&L and having a budget. And so to where you went to opportunity, and again, I'm trying to make sure I answer the question the best way possible. It's like, so that you have to start doing that, because if you don't have that, then you can create enough surplus to then have an investable budget. Because real estate makes a lot of money for a lot of agents, but a lot of agents literally operate from, hey, is there enough money in the piggy bank? Okay, I can write some checks next month. But there's no reserves, right? And there's a sequence. You build up a reserves, and then you get to 6 months of personal expenses, then 6 months of business expenses. Then you can have a rainy day fund, and then you can have a, when an opportunity presents itself, fund, right? Because opportunities have graduated for me from some of the best opportunities you see in real estate is literally, I actually have a text from somebody I went to high school with who's like, hey, I know you don't sell houses anymore, but my parents want to sell their house for cash. They don't want to do anything to it. Who would you recommend? I'm like, how much do they want? I walked into listing appointments where I said to the owner, as is, it'll sell for X. It'll sell for about $100,000 as is, whereas, and it'll probably be an offer from, nowadays it's, Open Door and these people. Or we can put $20,000 in it and it'll sell for $160,000. It'll about 90 days on the market between marketing and closed, right? What would you like to do? The seller says, I really want the cash and I want to close by Friday, right? So again, the caveat is you do it openly and transparently and you present all the options as a fiduciary. But a lot of times in my career, it's like, I got the $100,000, right? And you gave the best experience to the consumer because that's what the consumer wanted. Boom, I bought the house, I put 20 in it, I sold it for $160,000, I netted $18,000 after closing costs and commissions and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And my 100 became 118. And then I went back into my piggy bank. And 118 becomes 186. 186 becomes 257. So the reason I'm saying that to you is Remine started as an experiment where I probably spent $600,000 of my own money before we even decided to commercialize it.
That's right? So powerful. That's so powerful because
when we had spent $600,000 on the experiment that was then Remine, it was purely for my consumption.
And it was worth it. And it absolutely was worth it for you, right?
But for me, I was prepared. And when I realized that people would pay for it, then I went and raised outside capital and we capitalized it and it became its own entity. And, I decided to make now the time investment of I'm willing to walk away from my real estate businesses to go pursue this opportunity because it's this big. But what I have been accused of a bunch of times in my life is being lucky. And lucky because I either saw the opportunity, but most of the time I was able to take advantage of the opportunity. And that's where I think that's if you don't have either the knowledge, and I'm not talking about college degree, just like being hyper aware in reading and following trends to pounce on an opportunity where it's like, yeah, this is the way the world's going. I'm going to start running in that direction. And by the way, do you know how to outrun a bear?
I don't.
I just have to outrun you. That's
true.
That's how markets shift, right? I don't need to actually outrun the bear. I just need to outrun you. And so if I can run faster than the crowd over a 20-year career, I've been able to substantially take advantage of opportunities. And that is a combination of, having a good knowledge base of my surroundings in the industry I want to be an expert in, but also then having the discipline in my personal and business life to create these buckets of capital that when you see an opportunity, you can capitalize on it and not think twice.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Feel free to check out some of the other videos in this channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss another video. Lastly, join our growing Facebook group full of content to help grow your business.